let's see, what else can I cover on the show? Mortal Kombat came out in 92, so next year's the 25th anniversary. Yeah, that works. So when was that? No. Welcome to A Line Through Time, where I take the time to look through your favourite franchises and work out how it all lines up. Well, it's finally time. Those of you who've been around this channel for a while now know how I feel about Mortal Kombat. You know that my largest work to date was a 2-hour-long criticism of Mortal Kombat's 2011 entry that I made back in 2012, followed closely by the second crack I took at it in 2016. Mortal Kombat was my favourite franchise across all media from around 2002 to 2011. This makes it deeply embarrassing then that it wasn't until 2016 that I learned Mortal Kombat 1 released in arcades on the 8th of October 1992, my first birthday. I really don't know how I missed that. I knew it was in 92, I just didn't know the date. As such, this episode is in celebration of both Mortal Kombat's 25th birthday and my own 26th. This is how I'm spending my birthday, folks, talking about Mortal Kombat again. So Mortal Kombat released in a time when everyone was trying to make a fighting game to compete with the phenomenon that was Street Fighter 2. Midway Games decided to tackle this challenge with spectacle rather than superior gameplay. The character sprites were created by filming real people in front of a blue screen, there were huge splashes of blood every time a character got hit, and it featured violent finishing moves known as fatalities. Though ironically only one person actually died during the game's story. Go figure. This game was one of the main reasons video game rating systems were created, because irresponsible parents didn't do any research before buying little Timmy the new video for his lightbox. The story centres on the titular martial arts tournament whose outcome will determine the fate of the Earthrealm. There was an official prequel comic by series co-creator John Tobias which serves as the opening of the game's story, so we'll count it as part of the game itself. Same goes for the MK2 and 4 comics. In this comic we learn that the forces of Outworld have won 9 tournaments in a row and one more will allow Emperor Shao Kahn to travel to Earth and conquer it. The last time Outworld came this close, the great Kung Lao put a stop to it by defeating their champion Shang Tsung. He was then overwhelmed in the following tournament 50 years later by the 4-armed Goro, who was reigned as the tournament champion for the subsequent 450 years, not the 500 years the series has bafflingly insisted on since the beginning. This backstory gives us 3 more events before the game: the beginning of Shang Tsung's reign 950 years ago, Kung Lao's victory 500 years ago, and the start of Goro's reign 450 years ago. That's a lot for just one game, and to think some chucklefucks still insist that story doesn't matter in a fighting game.
Are you that much of a pleb?
A mere 6 months later, Mortal Kombat 2 released in arcades, boasting improved gameplay and enhanced violence. Almost immediately after the Shaolin monk Liu Kang's victory in the first game, Shao Kahn captures sole female participant Sonya Blade and has the other monks wiped out to lure the heroes to Outworld, where he challenges them to another tournament. They accept of course, but it was poorly explained why they would until 2011, when they added a stipulation that makes it the definitively final tournament between the two realms. The game also saw the first of the series' many retcons, changing the Thunder God Raiden from a prideful god out to prove himself mightier than any mortal, to the wise protector of Earthrealm and mentor to the heroes. MK2 is generally considered the fan favourite, and I honestly couldn't tell you why. Mortal Kombat 3 released in April 95. After being beaten by Liu Kang in the second tournament, Kahn has his dead wife resurrected in Earthrealm so he can take advantage of a loophole that allows him to travel there to reclaim her and bring his army with him for a full-on invasion. Yeah, invasion, not tournament. I think MK is the only fighting series that begins on a tournament to not continue to base its plots around them for the whole series. Through MK3 we learn of another backstory event. Kahn's wife Sindel was previously the Queen of Edenia before Kahn conquered it and merged it with Outworld. This event predates Kahn's focus on Earthrealm since Sindel was alive long enough to be officially married to Kahn before her suicide 10,000 years ago. I'll count the conquest and the suicide as a single event and get back to it later. November of that year brought Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 to arcades, which brought back all the dropped ninja characters and introduced a couple more. Yet there was actually a mainline MK game without Scorpion. It was weird. Ultimate was followed by MK Trilogy in 96, which was just Ultimate with everyone else from 1 and 2 brought back. Some fans count it as canonical, but I personally don't. It's always struck me as more of an all-star game that uses 3 as its base, like Tekken Tag Tournaments, even if dead characters do get justification for being brought back here. The main significance of Trilogy is that it changes some of the endings to lay the groundwork for the next storyline. October 1997 saw the release of 2 games that were closely tied together to begin the post-Shao Kahn era of the story. Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero was to be the first in a line of adventure spin-offs starring the likes of Liu Kang, Baraka and Jax, but the idea never really took off because people generally didn't like this one. The game follows the original Sub-Zero from MK1 a year before the tournament. He comes into conflict with the fallen elder god Shinnok and the worst character in the series back when he was tolerable, Quan Chi. Shinnok and Quan Chi then appeared later that month in Mortal Kombat 4, which brought the series into the world of 3D graphics, but primitive 3D tech meant a lot of the classic finishers were toned down to be more simple. The game sees Shinnok make his own bid for Earthrealm in the wake of Outworld's third defeat at the hands of Liu Kang. Guess who beats him? In addition to the main event, we also learn of Shinnok's previous bid for power thousands of years ago. Your assumption is probably that this predates the rest of the series, given that it's focused on the gods. But the 7th game's protagonist is put into a sleep state during Khan's conflict with Edenia and doesn't know about Shinnok's coup when he awakens, setting the coup around the time of the conquest of Edenia. The game also received an enhanced port on the Dreamcast, Mortal Kombat Gold, in 1999, which brings back 6 characters from the previous games. Not much worth saying, but much like Trilogy, it laid some of the groundwork for the next game's storyline. And even moving to a next-gen system, the endings of Mortal Kombat 4 are hilarious. Mortal Kombat Special Forces was the next adventure spin-off. It was to be a prequel supposedly set even before Mythologies focused on Sonya and Jax facing off with their nemesis Kano. However, John Tobias and half the dev team left midway mid-development, leaving co-creator Ed Boon and the rest of the team to scramble to make something workable. By the time the game released in June 2000, Sonya had been cut completely, even though there was a radio contact role that could very easily have been given to her. So the final game solely starred Jax, despite Kano being Sonya's rival more so than Jax's, and ended up being critically panned to the extent that only MK Advance could rival. Speaking of which, Mortal Kombat Advance was a GBA port of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 released in December 2001, just in time to ruin Christmas. Really though, the only reason I'm mentioning this worthless trash is for completion's sake, and to ponder whether or not this port was only made so that Special Forces wasn't the most hated MK game ever. In November 2002, the series skipped the arcades completely and went straight to the 6th generation consoles with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. The premise is that Quan Chi and Shang Tsung have formed the titular alliance and assassinated both Shao Kahn and Liu Kang. The remaining heroes then need to go to Outworld to deal with the two before they can resurrect the allegedly undefeatable army of the Dragon King. The GBA port came in 2 parts, Deadly Alliance and Tournament Edition, the latter featuring 3 characters exclusive to that version. The gameplay was now in 3D with multiple fighting styles per character, and it was great. But most fans nowadays are elitist pricks who act like they've always hated the 6th gen games for not having 2D gameplay like every other fighting game. Typical. It was after Deadly Alliance came out that I really got into the series. My dad had gotten me MK4 on PC when I was about 7 or 8 because it was cheap. I remember picking Johnny Cage first because he was this cool guy with shades on and I wasn't quite into ninjas yet. I got MK Gold in a 10 Dreamcast game offer from the old Game Network TV channel. Given how late in the year Deadly Alliance came out, it was probably in 2003, but it was definitely before 2004 because I remember waiting so damn long for Mortal Kombat Deception to come out a month and a half after the US release. Fuck you, Midway. I'm glad you went out of business, you fucks. Deception, one of my 3 favourite fighting games of all time, picks up in the immediate aftermath of Deadly Alliance where the heroes are scattered and most got killed. Raiden and the 2 sorcerers also die as the Dragon King Onaga returns by possessing Reptile with intentions of merging all the realms into one. There are 4 key portions of this story. We have the main event, of course, the new backstory of Onaga's reign over Outworld, after which his advisor Shao Kahn assassinated him with poison because Kahn isn't supposed to be a retarded brute Netherrealm. The very Eastern-style creation myth where the entity known as the One Being was defeated by the Elder Gods and his body was split into the realms, making the merger of all the realms a very bad idea, and the game's primary story mode, Conquest Mode. With Liu Kang's death in Deadly Alliance, the series began trying out different characters as the new hero. Deadly Alliance kinda had Kung Lao's descendant Kung Lao, while Deception gave us Shujinko. Shujinko's story begins around 40 years before Deception and continues on to the present day, ending with him unwittingly bringing about Onaga's return, leading to the intro sequence. The story was supposed to have time travel, but they realised that was retarded and cut the idea, but they never went back to fix the game's timeline, so Shujinko can earn the right to compete in MK1, then head down the road and immediately get scouted by Raiden for Deadly Alliance. The later GameCube port, lacking Deception's brand new online functionality, added Shao Kahn and Goro to the roster. Both were previously dead thanks to Deadly Alliance, but were now revealed to have survived through various shenanigans, and Goro's evil again now despite his development in Gold and Deadly Alliance. In addition to those two, the PSP port port, Mortal Kombat Unchained, added Jax, Kitana, Frost and Blaze from Deadly Alliance to set up their roles in the next game. The following year, the devs took another shot at an adventure spin-off and people actually liked this one. This one was Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, a co-op game featuring Liu Kang and Kung Lao, which we now know was originally a single-player game focused on Raiden. It's a retelling of MK2 whose canonicity is ambiguous. As well as ushering in a dumbed-down period where everything was boiled down to 2 factions per game that the series wouldn't really shake off for about a decade, Shaolin Monks also featured a lot of controversial changes to the story, like Scorpion being a villain, Goro's survival in MK1 not being a secret, and Kitana being brainwashed to serve Khan instead of just believing he was her father, leading to what is almost a running gag of Kitana being mind-controlled in almost every game from 2004 onwards. Some details from Shaolin Monks then carried over to the main series, while others stuck to MK2's version. It's a mess, but given how more recent games have depicted these events closer to the original MK2 than to Shaolin Monks, we're going to say that MK2 is canon, mostly, and Shaolin Monks is non-canon, mostly. I definitely have to do a video on all 3 versions of the story someday. With Shaolin Monks, Midway announced plans for 1 new MK game a year, giving us Deception in 2004, Shaolin Monks in 2005, and Armageddon in 2006. Armageddon begins sometime after Deception and brings back every single playable character from the series past, even Serena from Mythologies Atonement Edition, and Chameleon from the N64 version of Trilogy for the Wii version. The idea was to give everyone one last bash before most of them died permanently to make way for a Tekken 3 style timeskip and new generation. This game's conquest mode drew a little on Shaolin Monks for its gameplay and is the primary Armageddon plot. The story goes that there are too many powerful warriors and their abilities are tearing apart the realms, which was basically what the original plan for Mass Effect 3 was now I think about it. Edenia's Raiden equivalent Argus puts his 2 sons to sleep during Khan's conflict with Edenia. They awaken when the time is right to compete for full godhood and unwittingly determine the warriors' fates. One's victory will kill them all, the other will strip them of their powers. Beginning after Deception and running through the intro cinematic, Conquest caps off with main character Taven defeating the final boss and gaining the god powers everyone else is vying for. Instead of killing or depowering everyone, it instead makes them more powerful, not really resolving anything and presumably postponing the time skip. 2007 had no new game. So much for that then. 2008 was when the series debuted on 7th generation systems with Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, a game fans tend to hate more for the toned down violence than any of the gameplay changes, the fucking spectacle obsessed babies. The non-canon plot comes after MK3 with parallel events in the MK and DC universes causing them both to start merging. In the end, Raiden and Superman defeat the fused Shao Kahn and Darkseid, leaving both villains stranded in the opposite universe. And there was also a comic tie-in by John Tobias, which was cool. Too bad that special edition never came out in Europe despite the developers specifically saying it would. The game paved the way for the team's later DC-focused fighting series Injustice, and may have also saved the series. Only a few months after MK vs DCU's release, Midway filed for bankruptcy. See, they'd never really had another franchise anywhere near the level of success MK had. If MK did poorly, they had no other series to fall back on. But MK would survive as the franchise was purchased by Warner Brothers. Now, the 2 Mortal Kombat movies were distributed by New Line Cinema, which had been purchased by Warner Bros. Earlier in 2008 following the financial failure of the Golden Compass. However, those films were made in the mid to late 90s. I think it's more likely that it was the crossover with DC obtained by Time Warner in 1989 that put MK in WB's line of sight. Along with the series, the development team was hired on to make up the new studio, NetherRealm Studios, whose first project ruined my fucking life. Mortal Kombat, the 2011 game, not the 1992 one, is an in-continuity reboot that retcons the ending of Armageddon and the entire point of that story so that Shao Kahn wins and kills everyone. Raiden then sends visions of the future back in time to his past self during MK1 so he can fix things. And it's only now, writing this, taking a step back from the smaller details about continuity and the logic of the situation, that I realise the exact magnitude of how absolutely fucking retarded this premise is. I suppose we should be thankful that they didn't release this the following year as a 20th anniversary special that celebrates 2 decades of continuity by fucking erasing it. And let's be honest, that's probably exactly why they didn't do anything to celebrate the anniversary at all. It's fucking astounding that I can make a 2-hour-long critique of the game twice and still find more and more things to criticise. Just go and watch the 2016 version of the review so I don't have to repeat myself and I can finally move on with my fucking life. So, Raiden repeatedly fucks things up and gets all of the heroes, aside from Sonya and Johnny Cage, killed and turned into Quan Chi's zombie slaves. Through some truly baffling leaps in logic, the Elder Gods finally intervene and kill Khan, ending his threat for good and paving the way for Shinnok's steamrolling of Earth's 3 remaining heroes. Then in 2015's Mortal Kombat X, he gets his shit pushed in 4 fights in and we jump jump forward 20 years as Quan Chi attempts to revive him with a new retconned reason for Shinnok's invasion in the first place. And yes, X is in 10 because Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe is officially considered MK8 for some reason. In the end, most of the dead heroes remain evil zombies, Raiden gets corrupted like in Deception, and the next generation heroes are fanfiction levels of predictable. I've not done a critique of MKX yet, but it's definitely coming. To go along with the game, DC produced a 12-issue digital-first prequel comic also titled Mortal Kombat X. It bridges the gap between Shinnok's failed invasion and the rest of the game, and like the Injustice comic before it, serves to kill off a bunch of characters for no reason, and the continuity with the games is fucked. The story centers on the Kamidogu from Deception, now retconned from emblems that represent the realms, into daggers that Havoc can manipulate to control people. It also features Kotal Khan's war with the Shokan and Reiko's attempts to manipulate Mileena to gain power. And that's where we currently are with the series, so let's talk time frame. Starting with the games, Mythologies comes a year before MK1. Special Forces is apparently that same year. Honestly, Special Forces doesn't really fit in anywhere because there are far too many details that are outright wrong, so I'll just leave it where it's alleged to take place for now and discuss that continuity nightmare in a later video. MK1 itself leads directly into MK2. MK3 picks up shortly thereafter, but they've never been clear on how long, even in MK 2011's big story mode. Presumably though, it's the same year. Assuming Shinnok's invasions in both timelines are even the same events given how different they are, that takes place 2 years after MK3 according to Johnny in the intro of MKX. Kung Lao's second Bio and Deadly Alliance refers to Liu Kang's victory over Shang Tsung as being a decade ago. While this could be being rounded up or down, the fact that the game released in 2002, 10 years after MK1, I think it was intended to take place 10 years later. And yes, this means Scorpion was hounding Quan Chi and making him suffer for 8 long years between MK4 and Deadly Alliance.
Beautiful.
Deception comes right after that, and Armageddon, with no evidence either way, seems to come a short time later, so we'll say the same year. I mean, there was kind of a pattern around that time for fighting games to suddenly start cramming a bunch of titles into 1 year on their timelines. In MKX's intro, Johnny says Shinnok's coup was millions of years ago, while Raiden back in MK4 said it was thousands of years ago, which lines up more with Taven knowing Shinnok but not knowing he was evil despite having gone to sleep while Shao Kahn was invading Edenia. And with Kitana being born to Sindel's original husband 10,000 years ago shortly before Khan killed him, the conquest couldn't have taken place millions of years ago, and I also can't accept that either conflict lasted from millions to mere thousands of years ago. I'm more inclined to believe Raiden here given that, you know, he was there, and say it was around 10,000 years ago close to the conquest of Edenia. MK 2011's retcon of Sindel's suicide being to protect Earthrealm suggests Khan had set his sights on Earthrealm 10,000 years ago, while we only ever hear about the tournaments as far back as 950 years ago at the start of Shang Tsung's initial streak. As such, I'm sticking to the original idea that Sindel killed herself to escape Khan, not to protect Earthrealm, keeping both conflicts separate, which I'll expand on more later. When exactly Onaga's reign began is unknown, as is the time frame of the conflict with the One Being. Over to the second timeline. In MKX, as the story transitions from Shinnok's invasion to the present, the text 20 years later appears on screen. Sonya's chapter shows a later encounter with Quan Chi as being 20 years ago as well. Jax later claims it's been 25 years since Quan Chi was last seen, and Raiden has a flashback to MK2 taking place 25 years ago. The game just can't seem to make up its damn mind on the time frame. Ultimately, it's the on-screen text that's causing the problem, so we drop that evidence and we're left with Jax's comment of 25 years ago, which I seriously doubt he's going to get wrong given how bitter he is over what Quan Chi did to him. Additionally, given how Johnny and Sonya only get together after Shinnok's defeat, and Sonya realises she's pregnant 4 months later, it's easier to accept their daughter Cassie's position as a squad leader if she's 24 rather than if she's 19, even if we account for potential nepotism. The game has a number of flashbacks to 5 years ago featuring Raiden recruiting Kung Jin, Kotal Khan rebelling against Mileena, Kenshi seeing his son again, and Baraka's death. Aside from that last one, these events have not occurred by the time of the comic. Basically, the comic occurs at least 5 years prior to the main events of MKX. With one of those events evidently occurring before the comic and the rest occurring after, we can safely place the comic in the middle of that time period 20 years after MK4. A comment made by Jackie in the comic makes it clear that she and Cassie are under 21 at the time, which does work with either time frame. The comic also has Kotal Khan claimed to have been at war with Mileena for 10 years, even though his uprising only seems to begin 5 years prior to the game, which is when we estimate the comic itself to take place, so let's just ignore that. But what about actual years? The MK Wikia uses a BMK AMK system, that's before Mortal Kombat and after Mortal Kombat, which I need to explain because my audience has proven mostly incapable of figuring out such a basic concept in the past. past. But there's nothing in the games themselves to support the existence of this system. Besides, I can do you one better. If DA released and is set 10 years after MK1, maybe that indicates the series mostly passed in real time. MK4 released 2 years after MK3, just as Johnny claims the events are spaced out in MKX. Continuing this train of thought, MKX is set 27 years after MK1 to 3, which would place it in 2019, assuming MK1 is set in 1992. This is kinda supported by Cassie making a reference to 2013's Frozen in the comic, which from our estimates occurs in 2014, back when the film was fresh and untainted by YouTube leeches. It does seem to hold up, so if we go off this idea, we have this. MK1 to 3 are set in 1992, Mythologies and Special Forces in 91, MK4 in 94, Deadly Alliance to Armageddon in 2002, the comic in 2014, MKX in 2019, the start of the Civil War in 2014, the start of Shujinko's quest around 1962, the start of Goro's reign in 1542, Kung Lao's victory in 1492, the start of Shang Tsung's reign in 1042, and Sindel's death around 8000 BC. The one being conflict is the genesis of the MK universe, so it can be labelled as such. The only ones we don't know so far are Onaga's reign of Outworld, Shao Kahn's coup, the conquest of Edenia, and Shinnok's coup. It was mentioned in Sindel's MK3 ending, and I don't think anywhere else, that Shao Kahn conquered Edenia after securing 10 straight victories in Mortal Kombat, proving that the conflict between Outworld and Earthrealm isn't where the tournament began. But yeah, that's 450 years from Tournament 1 to 10, assuming Edenia never won. Kitana was a child when her mother died, Kitana's birth and Sindel's suicide both being labelled as 10,000 years ago. I can't see Sindel and Jared having Kitana during the actual invasion, so I imagine Kitana was born a short time before the equally short invasion, with Sindel's death coming soon after that, all within a few short years. As such, we'll place the 10th victory around the time of Sindel's death in circa 8000 BC, which we'll assume is not being rounded too much. This places the start of Kahn's campaign against Edenia at circa 8450 BC, with Delia's visions of Armageddon occurring around the same time. As for Kahn's coup, we know Kahn conquered a few other realms like Zeterra and Vaeternus, presumably through their own Mortal Kombat, which could easily have happened in the 9000 years between Earthrealm and Edenia. Also, Sindel is the only bride Kahn ever took across all the realms he conquered. As such, let's assume that Edenia was his first target, motivated partially by an infatuation with Sindel. During this time, Shinnok enacts his coup as the other Elder Gods are distracted by Kahn's machinations. His conflict with Raiden almost wipes out the Saurians, who allegedly originate in Earthrealm before fleeing to Zeterra. Zeterra is later conquered by Kahn, as is Vaeternus, home of the vampire people, who kept records of the Saurians, suggesting they'd been in Zeterra for a while before then, further supporting the idea that these two realms were taken after Edenia. With this, we can place Kahn's coup at circa 8450 BC as well. I'm sure Kahn would have needed to consolidate his power base in Outworld and deal with those still loyal to Onaga before moving on, but we don't know how long that might have taken, so we'll just leave it as very quick. We'll place Onaga's rise to power around the same time, since we've got no idea how long it took for Kahn's poison to kill Onaga, how long he reigned, or how exactly he conquered Outworld to begin with. Shinnok's coup then can be placed towards the end of the Outworld Edenia Mortal Kombat cycle, with Shinnok making his move while the stakes are at their highest for Edenia, circa 8000 BC. And I believe that is everything. You wouldn't think it'd be so complicated, but this is a series that has a very loose sense of continuity and regularly changes details large and small for basically no reason, a subject I've covered extensively in the past and will continue to do so in the future. But for right now, the Mortal Kombat timeline, until the developers start fucking it all up again, goes a little something like this. Timeline number 1, Genesis. The One Being wages war with the Elder Gods. The Elder Gods emerge victorious and split the One Being's essence into the many realms. The One Being's consciousness persists, subtly influencing those with power to work towards unifying the realms. Circa 8450 BC. The Dragon King Onaga becomes the Emperor of Outworld. He is poisoned to death by his advisor, Shao Kahn. Kahn begins a military conquest of other realms, intent on merging them with Outworld. He first sets his sights towards Edenia. The Elder Gods establish the Mortal Kombat tournaments, requiring the invaders' force to win 10 straight victories to earn the right to invade. The seeress Delia receives a vision of Armageddon. Her husband, the Edenian god Argus, puts his sons Taven and Dagon into a sleep state as part of a long-term plan to avert Armageddon. Circa 8000 BC. Shao Kahn's warriors claim their 10th victory. The Emperor personally leads his army into Edenia, slaying King Jared and taking his wife Sindel as his own. Once the realms are merged, Sindel commits suicide to escape Kahn, but he keeps her soul trapped in Outworld. He then raises Princess Kitana as his own daughter. The Elder God Shinnok enacts a coup against his fellow deities and attempts to seize Earthrealm. Earthrealm's protector, the Thunder God Raiden, battles Shinnok and defeats him, nearly destroying the Saurian race in the process. Shinnok is imprisoned in the Netherrealm and Raiden seals Shinnok's amulet in the Temple of Elements. 1042 2 AD. After conquering many realms, including Zaterra and Vaeternus, Shao Kahn challenges Earthrealm to mortal combat. The sorcerer Shang Tsung claims the first victory for Outworld. 1492. Shang Tsung's 10th victory is prevented by the Shaolin monk Kung Lao. Shang Tsung is banished to the Cobalt Mines for his failure. While there, he recruits the Shokan prince Goro to compete in the following tournament. 1542. Goro kills Kung Lao in mortal combat, regaining the Emperor's favour for Shang Tsung. Circa 1962. The spirit of Onaga recruits Shujinko on a false quest for the Elder Gods to collect the Kamidogu and bring about his resurrection. 1991. Kano of the Black Dragon attempts to obtain the power of the Eye of Chitian. Major Jackson Briggs prevents him from doing so. Shinnok recruits the sorcerer Quan Chi to obtain his amulet. Quan Chi hires Scorpion of the Shirai Ryu and Sub-Zero of the Lin Kuei to do so. Sub-Zero slays Scorpion and Quan Chi destroys the Shirai Ryu as payment. Quan Chi secretly copies the amulet and delivers a duplicate to Shinnok. Raiden sends Sub-Zero to the Netherrealm to reclaim the amulet. He obtains the fake, defeating Quan Chi and Shinnok along the way. 1992. The Shaolin monk Liu Kang defeats Goro and Shang Tsung, saving Earthrealm from Shao Kahn once more. Scorpion returns from the dead and murders Sub-Zero at the tournament. Kahn hosts another tournament in Outworld. Liu Kang defeats him and Kitana joins Earth's heroes. Kahn has Sindel resurrected in Earthrealm under mind control, allowing him to travel there to reclaim her and enact his invasion. Liu Kang once again defeats Kahn, sending him back to Outworld in a weakened state. Sindel is restored to her old self and returns to the throne of the newly restored Edenia. 1994. Shinnok reclaims the fake amulet and escapes the Netherrealm. He murders most of Earth's lesser gods before being defeated by Liu Kang. Raiden is given Shinnok's position as an Elder God. Scorpion discovers Quan Chi's role in the deaths of his family and clan and takes the sorcerer to the Netherrealm, tormenting him for years. 2002. Quan Chi escapes the Netherrealm and forms an alliance with Shang Tsung. The two slay a double of Shao Kahn and then Liu Kang. Raiden leads Earth's heroes against the deadly alliance, where most of them are killed. Shujinko obtains the final Kamidogu, allowing Onaga to revive in the body of the Saurian reptile. Onaga returns to Outworld to claim Shinnok's amulet. Raiden sacrifices himself to destroy Onaga, taking both sorcerers with him. Onaga survives and obtains the amulet. He revives Earth's heroes as his mind-controlled thralls, while Raiden revives in Earthrealm. Shujinko kills Onaga with the powers of the remaining warriors, while Liu Kang's spirit frees his allies. All of the warriors killed in the previous decade are revived. Shinnok gathers the forces of darkness, and Johnny Cage gathers the forces of light. The fire elemental Blaze begins Argus' plan. Taven is forced to defeat his brother as the two forces clash. Taven confronts Blaze and kills him. Most of the gathered warriors are killed as a result. Shinnok, having sent a doppelganger in his place, has Quan Chi revive many of Earth's best fighters as revenants. He attacks Earthrealm to take control of the Jinsei chamber, but Johnny Cage defeats him, allowing Raiden to seal him inside the amulet. Scorpion, Jax and the second Sub-Zero are freed from Quan Chi's hold. 2014. Outworld falls into civil war as Kotal Khan rises up to challenge Melina's rule. The Chaos Realm cleric Havoc attempts to gain power through the Kamidogu daggers and manipulating the Outworld general Reiko. His plan is thwarted by Takeda Takahashi and Scorpion, who traps Havoc's head in the Netherrealm. Sub-Zero slays Sector to take control of the Lin Kuei. 2019. Melina is captured by Kotal Khan's forces and executed. Shinnok is freed from the amulet by Quan Chi and seizes control of the Jinsei chamber. Quan Chi is killed by Scorpion and Johnny Cage's daughter Cassie Cage defeats Shinnok. The undead heroes remain corrupted and seize control of the Netherrealm, ruled by Liu Kang and Kitana. Raiden is also corrupted by Shinnok's plot. He presents Shinnok's still living head as a warning to leave Earthrealm alone and departs, unaware of the behind-the-scenes machinations of Goro and Dagon. What was that? Second timeline? What are you talking about? Reboot? They never did a reboot. You're crazy. And that's the Mortal Kombat timeline as best as I can figure. Again, some details have changed over time and I've tried to stick as close to the original vision as I can. I'm sure if I ever revisit the series in this show, things will be radically different because even without the rampant retconning of story details, there's also this weird air of incompetency running throughout. For example, in addition to everything else, MKX also thinks the Great Kung Lao's victory was 600 years ago because, as even the game's title proves, no one at Netherrealm can count!
This week on Cooking with Scorpion, learn about chopping, tenderizing, chopping, cake decorating, and chopping.